Welcome back to the channel. This is the channel where we navigate and help you through the wild, the weird, and the ever so changing constant real estate market with absolutely no fluff and no sugarcoating. If you're currently thinking of buying, selling, or even just asking the question if right now real estate's worth it, in this video, I want to walk you through real questions that real people have been asking currently and just cut straight through it and give you the ones that make the most sense. Before we dive in too deep, I just want to remind you to please hit that like and subscribe button so that you can be updated on future content that we release to better help you navigate the real estate world and moving to the Des Moines Metro. So getting down to the nitty-gritty of this video, we are going to cover 8 of the top questions that myself and my team have experienced over the last couple of weeks from different buyers and seller consults. And I think number 8 is actually going to surprise you. So the number one question that I've been asked over the last couple of weeks is, can I even afford a house anymore? And that's a pretty loaded question because it comes back to a lot of different factors, but it's a very valid question. And it's not necessarily a myth, and it's not necessarily false, and it's not necessarily any of that. The truth of the matter is housing over the last 5 years has really become expensive. But on the other side, the other cold hard truth is the rental market has increased dramatically and has also become expensive. Doing nothing, sadly, is also expensive because inflation, it doesn't care. It's always going to be there. And the key isn't, well, this is cheap. That's not the question you should be asking yourself. The question you should be asking, is this affordable and sustainable for you to take on for a period of time? And what does affordability actually look like? Affordability looks like a monthly payment, stability, and how you want to live the other part of your lifestyle outside of these expenses. So your monthly payment, it's just not the price of the house. I mean, looking at the big dollar amount, yes, that can be scary, and I totally understand that. But when you break down everything, including your, what a lot of people call phantom costs, what is your monthly cost to own that property? Now, the difference between owning and renting, the big difference is the maintenance. And that's one of the phantom costs nobody ever takes into consideration. Because if I'm spending $1,500 a month in rent, well, why can't I spend $1,500 in a mortgage? Technically, you can. But within that mortgage, you're not taking into consideration the increases that happen every year as well as the maintenance. Whether it's as small as replacing a furnace filter every month, which is what I recommend, side topic, but that's roughly $4 to $5. Take that times 12. Well, there was $60 in very small costs that you didn't take into consideration. What does it cost to have my furnace or air conditioner looked at once a year? It's roughly $150 to $200, depending on the company, per piece of equipment. So let's just say that's another $300. Well, miraculously, we're up to $360 in a matter of 2 minimal maintenance issues. Onto the stability factor. What is the stability? The stability comes back to your income, your job, any plans that you have on staying put. Because owning a house, it's not like renting. You have to make more than that 1-year commitment. And with the current market, that commitment needs to be 3 to 4 years minimum before you're going to see what I would classify as a true financial gain into your pocket. Last but not least, in the affordability factor, your lifestyle. What do you currently do in your lifestyle, and would you have to give up any of that? Whether it's going out to eat with friends, maybe it's a night out on the town, a movie, all kinds of different things. Are those things that you might have to sacrifice in order to keep the house in an affordable level for yourself? So the question isn't, is now a good time to buy? Am I priced out of the market? The question is where is my affordability? And how much can I afford for my current income, my current lifestyle, and the potential costs of owning the property. So, to recap, if you're looking at what is the price of the house and what is the monthly expenses, and your concern is if anything goes wrong, I screwed up, to me, that's a red flag, and that's not affordability. I would say that's more of a gamble. In gambling, you've got the opportunity to win, but no pun intended, the house always wins. Affordability isn't completely dead. It's not. It's just the barrier to entry has changed and shifted. And it's shifted very heavily over the last handful of years. And if you think you're going to wait around for that 3% interest rate that everybody bought in 20 to 22, I'm sorry, but I feel like you're going to be waiting a long time, maybe forever, for that boat to dock again. Question number 2 is, should I buy now or should I wait for rates and potentially the price to continue dropping in the market? And that really comes back to where your gut feeling is. If I could predict the future, I don't know if I'd be selling real estate. No, I'm just kidding. Love the job. But if I could predict the future, obviously, I'd be more than happy to give you all the right answers. Now, are rates historically at their lows? No. Are rates historically at their highs? Again, no. Is history an indicator of future? I don't know. The housing market kind of beats to its own drum. Whether it's a buyer's market, seller's market is kind of what dictates where the interest rate's at. But what I will tell you is, as of recent, and by recent I mean in the last 3 years, house prices have officially saturated or lowered back down to where they were about 2 years ago. And interest rates on top of that have also come down to where they were about 3 years ago. So if we pull back and look at this from a wide angle lens, I'm going to tell you over the course of the last 3 years, that's the only numbers I got right now is the most perfect time to buy. And according to all analysts, 2026, they're expecting the housing market to take off yet again. And we're talking upwards to 5 to 8 appreciation per points or percentages in that time frame. So imagine a house that you could buy today, by the end of next year, at 300 today, it's 315 at the end of the year. I don't know about you, but is that a gamble you're willing to take? When regardless, you're going to be paying a mortgage. It's just, whose mortgage will you be paying? Now, let's break this question down just a little bit further, because not everybody's meant to buy a house. So sometimes renting is going to be better. So one of my next questions would be, what's your time horizon? If your time horizon isn't at least 3.5 to 4 years, I would tell you very well could be better off renting. Because if not, you might be upside down when it comes time to sell and all the fees associated with selling, in order for you to capitalize on home ownership. Secondly, is the monthly payment comfortable? Is the payment comfortable today at the current rate? Because remember, we talked about buying now, waiting for the rate to drop or the house to get less expensive, more affordable, if you would. Well, if the payment's affordable today at the current rate, and it is not guaranteed, but very highly projected that rates are going to lower over the next, well, potentially by the end of the year yet, but definitely over the next 2 quarters, then what does that payment look like to you? And when I say that, my personal and most financial people's recommendation is anywhere from 3/4 to 1% interest rate drop. It's worth your time, energy, and money to refinance that property. Now, one other factor is, what's the opportunity cost of you not buying today? What's the alternative? Well, you're going to keep renting. I don't know about you, but most landlords do an annual rate increase. But if you do buy, you stay stuck in a house that might not fit your needs just because it fit your budget. But on the flip side, if you stay renting, you'd be missing out on equity as well as payment pay down or loan pay down so thus eliminating any equitable stance that you could have. So, in reality, the only downside, in my personal and professional opinion, unless buying is not for you, is going to come back to being stuck in the house that you didn't really want. Then I'm going to tell you your agent didn't do a good job for you. So let's sum this up in a quick little roundabout way. I would say don't wait for the perfect market. What I would tell you to do is wait for the right moment in your life, and then you buy something. I don't want you financially strapped to make a decision irrationally, I guess I would say. But on the flip side, I want everybody to have the opportunity, if they desire, to be a homeowner. So if buying now forces you to stretch into a painful level financially, then it's probably not the right time. And if you have to wait, you need to save up, or we need to work on your credit, or even if we need to adjust your price point, I'm here to help you. If you're solid in your financials and the right house came along, then what's really stopping you from buying? Because I'm sure you've heard the saying, marry the house and date the rate. If the rate lowers, by all means, refinance and capture that opportunity when you can. So far, if you're liking this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, as it's going to help me to better promote myself, as well as pushing content to you and all your people that you care about and giving them the most educational options that I can. So let's dive into probably one of the spicier sides of things, if you will, but it's also the only thing that's really changed in real estate in the last 40 years. And we deal a lot with this when it comes to educating clients as a whole, when it comes to buying. And that's, what's the deal with the commission and the buyer's agreement that's now being signed. And it is a federal law that this said buyer's agreement has to be signed before you can enter a house. So diving into the buyer's agreement, long story short, a lawsuit took place with the National Association of Realtors. And what it said was it disguised where the money was being moved, who was paying for what, so on and so forth. So to be more transparent in the real estate industry, we have come out with what is called a buyer's agency agreement. And that agreement dictates who pays the buyer's agent, which means which realtor or agent is representing the buyer, and how are they getting paid. Secondly, the other question that goes into this is, why do I have to sign this agreement? So what this agreement does is it actually makes you a client instead of just somebody looking at houses, window shopping, whatever. Now, the benefits of being a client for agents are different across the board. The main thing is going to be a fiduciary duty, and it also states that you, as the buyer, are hiring moi as your realtor. What that does is it ties the two of us together. It puts your needs above mine and my brokerage's needs, so that I perform, which this should be morally and ethically how everybody performs anyway, but putting your needs first, putting your safety first, putting everything that pertains to you as the buyer ahead of everything that pertains to the transaction. Now, the other thing is that you could attempt to do with this buyer's agency agreement is, if you wanted to bypass that altogether, your only option, there's two, is to tour through an open house, but they can only give you so much information because you're not their client. Or option two is to go directly to the listing agent. Now, some people are going to think, well, this is going to save me money if I go directly to the listing agent. I suppose, if the listing agent wants to bad enough. But on the flip side, how many people want to do additional work and get no additional paycheck? Food for thought there. So let's bundle this question up into a nice, neat little package. And what is this buyer agency agreement? Here's the main thing. Short, quick answer. If you're looking to hire somebody to help you through the home buying process, that's going to advise you on the price, they're going to be there to try to negotiate to save you potentially thousands of dollars. And they're also going to protect you with legal and contractually agreements and documents that can be presented between all parties. Then to me, realistically, what this did is it made the real estate market put on their big boy pants. And it's more of a grown up way of looking at things because you personally are getting taken care of with your own representation versus hoping that the seller had already been willing to work with the co-agent on the buyer side. So all in all, this is a great option for you as a buyer to give you just a little bit more of a sense of security. Question number 4. How do I buy a home without messing this up for myself? And let's be honest, we all know at least one person who rushed into buying a house and they regretted it the minute that they closed. I know a handful. Granted, it might be what I do for a living, but it was something that was done over COVID primarily for me. And it was something where houses were moving so quickly that people just were sometimes sight unseen. I want a house, let's buy it and go from there. But I want to walk you through the quick and easy steps on what I would recommend, as well as letting me guide you through the home buying journey to get you from point A to B. Number 1, let's talk to a lender. I've got my preferred. You might have yours. More than happy to use either one. But the big thing is getting pre-approved. You don't want to go to the store and guess what your budget is. I would much rather you talk to a lender, figure out where your comfortable spot is to get a real look at your budget, and then we work backwards from there. The other thing that talking to a lender is going to do is it's going to tell us what our total costs are within purchasing the house. And some of those fees that aren't necessarily thought about are going to be the down payment, your closing costs, your prepaids, which typically are taxes and insurance, as well as some moving expenses. And I'm sure walking the house, if you're not buying new construction, and sometimes even if you are, there's going to be some repairs or upgrades that you're going to want to do to the property to make sure that it's still within your budget after you get there. From my professional standpoint, regardless of resale or new construction, I always recommend an inspection because waiving an inspection might be some of the most expensive things that you ever do. And I don't recommend waiving an inspection because you know the seller. Maybe it's a family member. I don't really know or care what the reason would be, but I don't recommend it because some of the larger fixes that an inspection might have, let's say that there's no insulation or minimal in your attic. Well, unless you're going to climb up there and do it yourself, that could be thousands of dollars. And if you don't fix that problem, think of how much money is going to go out in your utility costs. One of the other big things that I want to look at, and this is where a realtor comes in handy, is reading your contingencies and all the documents that are associated with the purchase. Making sure that you're covered from the financial side, the appraisal side, your inspection side, anything else that you can dream of. We want to make sure that you are completely covered and you feel confident moving forward within your home buying journey. Now, the other thing I want you to do is I want you to think long term. Let's not talk about social media. We're not TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, none of that. Long term, the big picture is the floor plan. Does it work for you and your family's needs? Did you take into consideration the commute? Where are the schools? How far away do you work? What is the noise factor around where you're choosing to live? Is there future maintenance with the house, whether it's a roof? Maybe your mechanicals are older. Those are big ticket items, and those are must-haves. I'm not saying, hey, I don't like the carpet or I don't like the paint. I'm saying, what are the must-haves in a house that I want you to look at and consider? So how do you avoid screwing up your next home buying opportunity? You slow down. You think. You go through the process. You ask all the questions that you need to feel confident and comfortable with moving forward. You demand the explanations for the questions that you ask, and you get straight answers. If you don't understand something, that is a reason in itself to pause. Not a reason to just sign and hope that everything works out. So another question number 5 is, why are there still so few houses? Should I be looking at new construction versus resale? And that's a pretty big question. And the reason there's still so few houses is we are slowly transitioning from a seller's market potentially into a buyer's market. We've actually come a long ways since COVID on inventory levels. However, we're just now hitting what is called a neutral market in the Des Moines metro area. So it's improved, but it's not where it's 100% a buyer's market. And what's the difference in the markets? So, short answer, short inventory means all the leverage is in the seller's hands because you, as the buyer, don't really have the upper hand to negotiate, because if you like the house, you're going to buy the house. Whereas on the flip side, if we have an overabundance of inventory, you as the buyer have all the leverage in your corner. Because why? Because what makes that house stand out compared to the other 4,500 that's on the market for this area? So some of the things that I want you to also consider within the question of why are there so few houses on the market is some of the current owners are on the fence on selling. Why? Because they're locked into potentially a 2, 3, or 4% interest rate, and they're not sure if they want to make that jump to a 6 to 7% interest rate. And I totally get that. Also, new construction slowed for a handful of years within the last crash. I don't know if you remember '08, but in '08 through 10, the builder market completely came, I'm not going to say to a screeching halt, but completely came down to less than ideal numbers for new construction. The other thing is the population didn't really stop growing. So thus meaning as kids leave houses, so on and so forth, you got people still needing a place to live. So the resale inventory has still stayed relatively lean. And that's where the new construction side comes into play. The pros of new construction, because there's pros and cons, is you're getting a brand new house. What does that brand new house come with? A roof, furnace, AC, usually all the appliances, all new flooring, all the things that you wouldn't have to worry about on the maintenance side of things. Some builders will let you customize, some will not. COVID really put a damper on the builders that allowed you to customize. But one of the other big things is builders typically offer some type of financial incentive to buy, whether it's a potential reduction in interest rate or an appraisal, closing costs, prepaids, something of that nature. They're still giving concessions. Now, the cons of buying new construction, you might pay a slight premium for new construction because let's face it, everything's new. You're going to kind of pay for those repairs within the purchase price because you should have 6 to 8 years with very minimal maintenance other than probably changing your furnace filter. You most likely are not going to have vegetation around new construction. Yes, most ordinances dictate 1, maybe 2 trees on a property. But remember, that tree, it's going to be teeny tiny, like literally inch to 2 inch around when they plant it. So you're going to have to wait 15 to 20 years before that tree is even going to throw you any shade. One of the other big cons is upgrades. Upgrades to a new construction can be very expensive, whether that's putting in different appliances, it could be finishing a basement, installing a fence. All of these options are thousands, and finishing a basement are tens of thousands of dollars that a resale is most likely going to already come with part of, if not all of those options. So is new construction better? I'm not going to say yes to this. It's definitely not automatically better. When you plan to stay a long time, 100% better. When you plan to have lower maintenance costs, again, 100% better. The builder incentives making the numbers seem to work a little easier, that's obviously going to help the pocket. But what's not better about it is it most likely is going to stretch you to the top of your budget just to have something new and shiny. You're also, with new construction, let's be honest, you're pushed to the suburbs. You're pushed out. You were a cornfield last year. So you're going to be looking at longer commutes, Your location might not be ideal for where you want to be, aka the schools, where you're working. Maybe it's shopping, eateries, hospitals, whatever the case may be, and your resale value. New construction does appreciate at a higher level. However, when it's still being built in the same community, you can't expect that type of appreciation with construction still going on. So, a quick recap that I would say is sometimes the best deal might be a slightly dated resale that you can slowly update over time. But sometimes, with the builder's incentives, that could also be the better route for you. So, truly, it's going to come down to the numbers and where you're comfortable to move forward. So, one of the other main questions that I'm asked is where is the best place to move or invest in the metro? And as much as I would love to give you my opinion, I can't do that. It's classified as steering or more or less redlining as well. And if you want more information on that, there's videos on YouTube if you just YouTube and redlining in Des Moines, Iowa. But the biggest thing that I'm going to tell you is we need to be looking at investing for yourself, but it needs to come back more so to one of the answers to the questions that's previous. And we need to be looking at something that is going to fit affordability. And that affordability needs to take into consideration your opportunity with potential job growth. That would be a big one, because just because you take a job on this side of the metro, but your house was purchased over here, what was the job opportunity and or money cost for the commute? So I would say job growth or opportunity would be an important one to take into consideration with the affordability side, but then the quality of life. So in our metro, we've got a lot of entertainment downtown and a lot of eateries clear to the west side of the metro. But if that's not your cup of tea, then there's plenty of other options. But if that is something that's important to you, obviously within that location is where you're going to want to be. And I did just do a video a couple of weeks ago about some of the top towns through the metro and what they have to offer and the way that you should look at it. So that might be a video that you check out as well and see which one fits the most for you. But when you're moving, think of the cost of living, not just the price of the home. We have to take into consideration the property taxes, the insurance costs, as well as your commute. And that darn commute keeps coming up because, believe it or not, that's a pretty healthy expense that nobody ever takes into consideration. So consider you are moving towards opportunity, family, lifestyle, or are you just running away from the current market? And that would be a question that only you can answer. Because if the prices are too high in the metro, yeah, we can look half hour to an hour outside of the metro and find you a house that gives you more bang for your buck. Is it going to be that best of an investment for you? The likelihood is probably no. Because you're not just buying a house, you're buying the potential of the opportunity. And that opportunity could look at, it's a stepping stone. It could become a rental. There's all kinds of opportunity with you buying a house. Now, if we're looking at it more on the investing side, right? Because this doesn't have to tailor just to somebody looking to buy a house for their own place to live. We're going to look at places that are going to justify rent levels. You could look for long-term demand as whether or not there's always been a rental market where you're buying. And you're also going to want to know the vacancy rates for where you're buying as a true investment. And after all of that's said and done, at the end of the day, you need to make sure the numbers work for you, whether it's personal or it is investing, because all those numbers have to be taken into reality for you to move forward. Question number 7 is one that surprises you, but in reality, it's something that really needs to be thought about. And that's what home features actually matter when buying in 2025. Now, you can replace it with whatever year, but I'm going to tell you as the years change, the features change. How many people do you know that want or need, say, a wine cellar? Maybe it's a trophy room. Shoot, the days of the theater room, they're on their way out. Sadly, people just don't watch TV together anymore. But in today's standards, I would tell you the big things to focus on is going to be efficiency, which is going to come back to your windows insulation, HVAC, stuff of that nature, the stuff that drives your energy costs up. So you can either pay through the energy costs, which give you no return, or you can look at more energy efficient, if you will, that will actually give you bang for your buck, as well as comfort while you live in the house. Another big one ever since COVID was the work from home space. It's not necessary, and sometimes people just use one of the extra bedrooms. But in the reality of things, to have an actual functionable space that works as office is phenomenal in today's market. And the reason being is COVID definitely opened the eyes of a lot of employers that says, hey, we can save on costs in the office, just work from home today. And that's a nice feature to have, because I know in my personal house, I wish I had an office space because I am in one of the spare bedrooms. The other thing that's coming too, just because of the barrier to entry type of situation, or we could say financial savings plan, is something that offers multi-generational flexibility. Now, what that could entail, finished bedroom, maybe it's got an ensuite somewhere outside of the primary suite, but just making sure that the layout works for the potential of an extended family member, whether it's your mother-in-law, father-in-law, maybe it's your own parents, but living with you, or vice versa. Maybe you're living in your parents' basement. I don't know. But if you're a buyer looking for a home where the bones are going to be solid, where you're not going to have an absorbent amount of costs that go into your mechanicals, your roofs, your windows. The cosmetic stuff is an easy fix. It's the bones that get to be expensive. Now, if you're a seller, what features actually matter? Well, it's going to be those features that I just discussed. You don't need to remodel the house to chase any current trends. You're not trying to sell somebody else's house. You're selling your house. And with that being said, you're only going to guess what the next buyer wants, from the flooring cover to the paint colors to whatever. But I'm going to tell you simple updates or upgrades, I guess. Let's call them upgrades. It's going to be LED lighting. It's going to be a manicured yard. It's going to be maybe updated faucets and fixtures. It's going to be things that people really catch their eye on, the shiny stuff. It's not going to be those big ticket items. So in reality, it's two totally different worlds if you're a buyer or a seller, because from a buyer standpoint, I'm going to focus on what are the phantom costs or repairs or maintenance that would be required from the buyer's agent side. But from the seller side, it's what do we need to do to catch somebody's interest to make this one stand out versus the one down the street. So the small things can actually make your home feel more like a 2025 version of new construction without burying you in a ton of renovation costs. So last but not least, but definitely probably my favorite question of the whole video, is real estate still a smart investment, or should I just rent and invest in the stock market? And that's entirely going to come back to you and your comfort levels. But in my honest and personal and professional opinion, I would say, why pick just one? Why not do both? And here's the quickest rundown I can give you of that. So within purchasing real estate, what are you doing? You're giving yourself a place to live. And immediately it might not be classified as an investment in most people's eyes. However, it works in multiple different ways, from giving you shelter or housing to you kind of have a forced savings plan, if you look at it that way, because of your debt pay down and equity increase. You also have the appreciation, hence the equity, but also the value of the property is going to go up pretty regularly year after year after year. On occasions, you might see a little bit of a pullback, and it's very rare with where we live in central Iowa that you're ever actually going to see a decline in property values, but you might just see a little bit of stagnation, if you will. Well, the other big benefit to owning real estate over stocks is going to be the tax benefit. And that comes back to your CPA, which I'm going to let them dive into that for you and give you much more solidified answers. Now, what do stocks do for you? Well, stocks, depending on the account, are immediately able to be liquidated, thus meaning you have cash back at your fingertips if you need it. It gives you the ability to diversify what you're investing in. Whereas buying a house, say 250,000, that's putting your eggs literally in one basket. You can buy a lot of different stocks for 250,000. Would I recommend a ton of different stocks? Again, it's not something I would recommend, but talk to your financial planner. Historically, long-term returns within the stock market are going to be similar or greater than real estate, but it comes back to the market. And it's also going to come back to what do you do with the real estate? The real problem isn't whether do I pick houses or stocks. The problem really would come down to if you choose to do nothing and just hoping everything works out the way that you want it to. Because if you're going to rent and you're saving extremely aggressive, and let's be honest, today's rental market, it's not that much cheaper than buying, but you're going to have to put the money you save into some investment vehicle. Because if not, you're really not doing anything with the extra money. So being productive is probably the biggest thing that I would tell you in that strategy is just make sure your money's working for you. Because if you're renting, it should be easier for you to save and put it in the market. But on the flip side, if you're renting, you're just making your landlord wealthy. So that's about the gist of what I want to disclose within the investment world. And it's something that I'm more than happy to talk further in depth with, as I've been a real estate investor for 20 plus years, and I do dabble in the stock market. But it's one of those things where you really have to figure out where your comfort level is and what makes more sense to you. So this video definitely had a lot of information packed into it. And I just want to recap the 8 big questions that people are asking currently in 2025. And that's, can I afford a house? Should I buy now or should I wait? What actually is this new buyer's agreement and the commissions that were discussed? How do I buy without screwing it up? Why is the inventory levels still relatively low? And should I be considering new construction to avoid the resale? Where should I move or potentially invest? Which features in a home are the most important to look at, both from a buyer's standpoint as well as a seller's standpoint? And is real estate still a smart investment, or should you look into renting and investing in stocks? So if you're still watching, I want to say thank you. You're clearly and serious about making a smart move and not panic moves. You're wanting to educate yourself, and I hope I'm doing so within these videos. But maybe you're thinking about buying your first home. Maybe you're thinking about selling and either upsizing, downsizing, or right-sizing. What I want you to do for yourself is I want you to think about what you need to do. And then secondly, I want you to call or text me. Shoot, you can even email me if you want. I'll get right back to you. But let's sit down. Let's run numbers. Let's look at what your goal is and step back and build a plan from that makes sense in where your life is headed or where you want it to be. Again, let's not jump into this like TikTok, Instagram, or Facebook. Let's dive into this from a numerical side, from something that makes sense to you. So if you would, please hit the like and subscribe button so that more people are able to see this. If you want, drop your biggest question in the comments. I'll be sure to answer it. And I look forward to our next chat together.